This is Flipping the Script podcast, the soon-to-be #1 leadership podcast for purpose-driven leaders and great guest experts who give us a unique insight into what leadership looks like behind the scenes. I'm Shalia Stafford, your host, and I'm committed to helping you lead your challenges using leadership strategies to gain new perspectives, fuel your growth, and transform the way you execute on your success. Welcome back, everyone. It's Shalia here. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today, Gustavo Salazar, a Georgia Tech graduate, sales engineer, and a dedicated mentor serving the next generation in a multitude of ways through his passion to see the next generation succeed. Gustavo's a prime definition of leadership in action, not just in your career, but in his personal life and in the community. In today's show, we're going to go behind the scenes of the story of Gustavo and how his journey as a leader started, how it's evolved, and where it's going. Gustavo, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hey, Chalia. First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's an honor for me to be here and share my story. And I look forward to the upcoming questions.
There's a lot to go in today. I hope you're comfortable and you have your cup of coffee.
Oh, yes. I just had a cup of coffee. It's about 1:45 p.m. and I think we should be all set. I'm full of energy right now.
Nice. Good. Well, look, I'm on my third cup, so if the questions start getting fast, you know where it's coming from.
Oh, there you go.
So I want to give a little bit of backgrounder to the audience on how you and I met through the Latin American Association. Gustavo and I actually both serve as mentors to high school students through this organization, and we were celebrating the end of our mentoring journey at a mentor banquet where I heard Gustavo's mentee who nominated Gustavo for Mentor of the Year. And again, congratulations for that, Gustavo. That's such a phenomenal accomplishment to be able to do that and to create that impact in someone's life. But hearing your mentee discuss the impact that you created in his life really captivated the audience, especially myself, because coming from my background and not having many great examples in life, I know firsthand what you are doing in his life. And I wanted to get just a second to get your thoughts on what drove you to be a mentor.
You know, number one reason has to be very similar to yours, because when I was growing up, it was very difficult to find people to look up to, people that were similar background, similar language, similar just story, right? And I think as I've progressed with my career and my education, one of my main goals has been to give back to someone, to be that one person that's going to change a high school student's life. And that's what brought me to be a mentor. And it's important for a relationship to be established with the mentee as well as the mentor, where you become a friend to them and they share with you all their struggles through their education, their high school education. And you can provide some advice to them and guide them in the right direction. At the end of the day, like I said, a lot of kids don't have that someone to look up to and to guide them. And that's what I've always wanted to be for that one person.
One of the guiding principles is that leaders create more leaders. And that is essentially what you're doing through your work with him.
Yes, that's correct. And with my mentee this past year, I'm actually hoping to continue that relationship, because even though the mentoring program ends, his career doesn't end. And I will make sure to be on top of him, making sure that he continues throughout his college education and hopefully be of help when he goes out into the workforce.
I love that. And just how I can imagine it was when you were first meeting your mentor, we're trying to get to know one another. And to help our audience break the ice and get to know you a bit better, I'd like to ask you a few fire-away questions.
Oh.
Let's kind of kick it off with, this is a really important topic for me, food. I am a foodie. As a matter of fact, the only reason that I work out is so that I can continue to eat the foods that I love. But when it comes to food, what's your go-to order at your favorite restaurant?
I am from the country of Colombia in South America, and that is always my go-to. If I had a spot to pick right away, I'll go to a Colombian restaurant. There's actually one pretty close to me that I frequent, and my favorite food item at that restaurant would be, it's called mojarra frita. So it's like a deep fried tilapia. That's good. It's not very clean to eat. You end up messy. It reminds me of my childhood. I grew up in Colombia until I was 8 years old, and that's the reason why I like going back to a Colombian restaurant every time. It reminds me of my culture, and to be honest, what can be better than Colombian food? Some people might agree, others might not.
What is something that you wish you would have known when you started out?
I think three things would be my answer to that question. And one of them being networking. The other one is being finding mentors. And the third one being don't be afraid to take risks. Networking. I believe it's very important as you start off your career, even back to college, that you build relationships and advance your career through networking. I've always said that so your education, it allows you to meet other people. But at the end of the day, whether you like it or you don't, it's who you know that's going to enable you to showcase your skills and communicate your interests in corporate America. So at the end of the day, what you know will get you to who you know, and who you know will get you to that next career step. To be honest with you, at the beginning of my career, I didn't think it was important.
Why is that?
Because I think I graduated with an engineering background. Mm-hmm. And I was always focused on being technical, crunching numbers. You don't need to talk to people. And very beginning of my career, if it wasn't for other people that changed my mentality and pushed me to start networking, I wouldn't have done it.
I love that you said that, because I found that a lot of those who are in the tech industry tend to feel the same way as you, that it's not something that they necessarily need when it comes to building those relationships. And really, for some, it's not as easy to go out there and build those relationships. What was your first networking experience like, and how has it evolved now that you've gotten more used to it and you've been able to see the fruits of that work pay off?
Yeah. First networking experience would definitely have to be in college. We would have career fairs. We would have, we would call it information sessions. So a company would come in and give you pizza and have you sit with them for an hour to listen to their presentation about their company and why they want to hire you. But at the end of these sessions, you are encouraged to walk up to the recruiters and kind of give your elevator speech, tell them who you are and why you want to work for them. These recruiters are picking up hundreds of resumes every information session. So it's really important for you to make an impact on them so they remember your resume and they give you that interview, that job. I think at the end of my freshman year, beginning of my sophomore year in college, I started attending these sessions because I wanted to get an internship. It was very important for me at the moment, and I had to push myself to learn how to talk to recruiters. I didn't know what an elevator speech was, how to create one, how to create a resume, and just start from scratch. I would say that's my first networking experience.
Did it feel awkward for you in the beginning?
Very awkward.
Yeah.
What do you talk to these guys about other than yourself? In reality, you want to make connections and build a relationship with a recruiter. That's how you get that interview. Right.
I know for me, it was very similar. When I look back at some of my first networking events, you go up and you do the small talk. Hey, how are you? They tell you how they are. And I remember asking after they told me how they were, how are you again? So it's certainly something that we have to really just put ourselves out there and being comfortable with some of those awkward moments that are bound to happen in the beginning. And it gives us so much valuable information about ourselves and how to better navigate those experiences the next time. because it's not necessarily about going the first time and knocking it out the park. It's progress and process over time.
Yep, it's the type of thing that you have to learn from experience, learn as you go. You learn from the failures and the mistakes that you make during networking, right?
Yes.
About what to talk about, all that.
So you mentioned that you had some phenomenal mentors in your life that helped change your mindset about what networking looks like and what it can do for you and what it could do for others as well. Tell me about what that was like.
I essentially ended up getting my first internship with a company in Indiana. Then after that, went back to school for a semester and got the chance to do another internship with a different company, who I eventually went to go work for full time. But during this first internship with company number 2, there were 2 individuals who they're definitely one of my early career mentors. And they're the ones that taught me how to go out to corporate events. They taught me what to talk about during a company dinner. And they really pushed me to meet other people, especially the people they knew. They introduced me to them within the company. And that I have to admit that really helped me. Those two guys, one of them names is Juan Alvarez, the other guy is Juan Mejia. They work for General Electric Aviation in Boston. And that's where I was. Thanks to these guys, I believe I learned how to network.
And now you're able to show the next generation how to.
Yes.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that impact of how the effects of what others teach us and take the time to show us can trickle down into the next people that we choose to also pay it forward and mentor them.
That's right.
And so I know you had mentioned that what they showed you was really helpful. How did that influence your growth?
Through the power of networking, I was able to meet other people who had different roles with the company. And I was able to kind of narrow down as to where I wanted to go to for my next internship and my full-time position.
So what are you curious about right now?
Right now, I'm curious about a lot of things. Actually, I've been, for the past about a year, I've been trying to build my skill set in sales. Prior to that, my skill set was based on technical engineering, design engineering. And I don't know, I just wanted to experience what sales was. And I took that big risk and I switched over. And I've been learning as I go. I've already had about a year of experience and learned many things I never learned in school. Another thing that goes along with that is I've been trying to learn about negotiation strategies, and that's all through reading books, literally. Within my role, I've also been curious about how to establish strategic relationships that are going to benefit you as a salesperson, and how to create relationships that are value adding to the company, within your customers, with your suppliers, your distributors, all that. And I believe it's creating a corporate relationship. It's very different than at a personal level. And there's things you learn that you should do and things you learn that you shouldn't do. And that's what I'm curious about right now.
That is a powerhouse of skill sets right there. How did you get to that conclusion that sales was an area that you wanted to grow on? Because typically most people hear sales and they're like, nope, that's really having to put yourself out there.
It all goes back to, I guess, when I was a little kid. I've always had that entrepreneur mindset. And when I'll tell you a story, when I was a kid, I would have an aunt in Colombia. I think I was like 10 years old. And this aunt she would send me for at no cost, right? Just because she wanted me to sell things over here. Shirts and hats that had Colombian flag or Colombian name on it. Go out my mom would take me to Colombian restaurants and shops, and I would make a cold sales call. I know what that means now. Didn't know what that meant then. And I had to sell my products, and I made, $100, $200. That's when you're 10 years old. That's a fortune. And I'd learned that adrenaline rush that you get with sales, and it kind of inserted the entrepreneur chip in my head. So after that, I always told myself I have to be my own boss, own my own business. Not there yet. Have had experience with it, but that chip is still there. You never know what the future will bring.
That's awesome. I think the skills that you just described there, they're phenomenal. And those are skills that transcend beyond just your role and where you are now, but skills that seep into entrepreneurship and seep into just, I think in general, life is sales. We always have to contemplate how we introduce new ideas to other people, how we influence change on ideas that matter, and learning the science and the skill set behind that can really take you far. So tell me, what's something that you've failed at?
Something I failed at relates back to what I was saying, that I have had some entrepreneurship experience during my young professional career. And about a year and a half ago, a partner and I, we tried to start a company from scratch while we were working our full-time jobs, just because I guess we had a lot of free time and we wanted to do something different. So we had an idea and we wanted to execute it. I look back at it and I would say the reason why we failed within a few months, it's because of we had a lack of sales experience. Which again, that failure also contributed to my motivation to learn more about sales and go into a sales organization. So why did we fail? Was because we weren't focused on selling. I think we focused way too much on the marketing aspect of creating a company. Like how to even create a company, we had no idea. So we spent too much time into that instead of executing our idea and selling it. And that's what I needed. After that, I said, hey, I need to build my skill set in selling at a corporate level.
That's pretty phenomenal there that you were able to make that connection to not only take a risk and essentially quote unquote fail, but to see the opportunity in that challenge. You learned this invaluable data about yourself that then led you to understand how to better invest in your own skill set to execute on a bigger strategy that you have here, which is really just building out not who is Gustavo right now, but who is Gustavo in the next 10 years and where is he going and what does he need to learn, what he needs in order to be the best version of himself to give that also back to others. How did you reach that point in discovering to make that connection? Because some of us would just say, you know what, it failed. I'm just going to go back to doing what I've always done and just stay there because it feels comfortable there.
I think I've always been comfortable being uncomfortable. It's one of the ideologies I live by, and I'm also a risk taker. Give you an example. I broke a leg back in November, 6 months ago, because I was taking a big risk.
Oh, so, no. What happened?
A motorcycle involved. So, anyways, back. I think what led me to it is I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. I take risks, but they have to be evaluated risk, right? And I've always had the business acumen, and I wanted to make the connection between business and engineering, which is where I am today right now.
And what is that connection when you were thinking, this is how engineering works, this is how business works? How did you develop this bigger this bigger strategy, so to speak, in your mind to understand, I need to start connecting some dots.
Yeah. I know at that point I had known that I wanted to go after an MBA, which is still in the works, and that I wanted to go into business. Just wanted to go into a business role. But being a design engineer, no one's going to hire you to be a business development manager or a director of sales, right? So I needed to take the next step, one step at a time. So I decided to become a sales engineer, right? Where I was able to connect the sales aspect of my organization to my engineering background. And that has hopefully that will become a stepping stone to a business role in the future for me.
I love that. I'm a strong believer that our careers are more than just a means to an end. They're a catalyst to help us become more self-aware about who we are, not just internally, but externally. If we're able to challenge ourselves the way you did and the way you do in our careers, we'll be able to support our biggest aspirations.
I agree. And one of the things I believe in is that you shouldn't, when you're thinking of the next job, the next step in your career, it shouldn't be an easy one. You should be after jobs that no one else is after because of how hard they are. Those are the jobs that are really going to give you that big push in the corporate world.
We have our values, things that are really important to us, our guardrails, so to speak, on how we operate in life. But truly, to have those values, you have to test them under pressure. Because when they are tested under pressure, that's when you really know either how prepared you are to uphold those values or what you might need to learn more to better align yourself with what you really want. And not the only, but I will say that one of the greatest ways to figure out what you might need to strengthen that, or if that's truly the direction that you want to go, test it under pressure.
That's right. I mean, if you're afraid of failing, then you took the risk. And if you fail, then you learn that that's not what you want to do, or you can give it another shot. But there's really no downside to failing at this point. You already have a career set. You're not going to lose your job. There's plenty out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said there is very true as well, that when we're fearful, instead of just being fearful of the what ifs, instead of being fearful, prepare yourself to handle the what ifs, right? If you do fail at something and you come out knowing, well, you know what? I wasn't as ready for, like what you may have said, for sales. Let me go out and prepare myself for sales, because that's what's going to lead me to my ultimate success. And it's what's going to lead me to living out the meaning in the work that I wish to create.
That's right. Yeah. It's not only about learning about the role and what you do within the organization. It's about learning about other people's roles and how they tie into the big picture.
They don't teach you, like you said, they don't teach this in class. It's in school. It's almost like learning how to navigate an organization. We come out learning what we learn when we go to school, or with whatever skill set we come into, then whatever industry we're in. And it's not simply applying that skill set or our background knowledge into our career. It's also learning, how do you navigate everything else that's happening around me?
Yep. And one thing to add to that is coming from a background of Latino minority background, right? A household, we're first generation immigrants here, right? So when I was growing up, I didn't have parents who were involved in corporate America or corporate world in general. My parents were hard workers, but they never were able to teach me how to behave out in the corporate America culture. But I think one of the things that we need in our current generation is implementing programs at a high school level, at a college level, that are going to teach our students how corporate America works and eventually teach them how to navigate it effectively when they become older and they go out in the workforce. I think that's very value adding.
Absolutely. And I know you partake in a few different organizations that do teach leadership and invest back into our youth. What are some of those organizations that you're part of?
Well, first, the reason why I'm part of them, it's not just to be part of them, right? I've always wanted to pay it forward and make a difference in the community that made a difference in me. So the Latino in Atlanta. And I think it's very important to, when you contribute to an organization, that you use your skill sets and experiences in order to add value. A lot of people think donating back to an organization is a way of adding value. Yes, it is. But if you have a skill set that can help them grow as a nonprofit or an organization, use that, and that's the way you're going to make the biggest impact. I'm part of Latin American Association, and I am a mentor for them. We had a whole conversation earlier about this. The reason why I joined them is because I know they are an organization that they provide the resources to our Latin American community here, the resources they need to be successful. And I saw it firsthand, and I fell in love with what they do, and I've always wanted to be a mentor. Another organization, they're a nonprofit who I do a lot of work for, and they are called HOPE. It's Hispanic Organization Promoting Education. Essentially what they do is they have implemented programs at high schools where they're touching the lives of 3,500 students in Georgia, 62 high schools, and they're allowing the students to become leaders at a high school level. The students go through a whole leadership training. They are given the option to become leaders at their high school for their chapters. And these students come out to be amazing people. I've met some of them that have graduated. I've met some of them that are senior year. And it's amazing what they're doing. And a lot of times it's thanks to this organization. So this is an example of where I've added value by using the skills I know so far. I became the sponsorship coordinator for the organization. And I've been able to implement ways of tying sales to sponsorship and be the most effective at providing or seeking out sponsors and establishing relationship with companies that are going to contribute to this nonprofit. And I would never have done this if I didn't truly believe in their mission.
And I have to imagine that this challenges you even further to put yourself out there and take calculated risks to really understand how you can be at your best and through your career and the work that you're learning so that you can have those effects pour over into the kids who desperately need it in the Latino community.
That's right. And it fills my heart every time I meet a student who's going into a university or a college with a full scholarship. Even about it, knowing where they come from, what their background is. A lot of these students are first generation immigrants, and the fact that they were able to fight for that opportunity fills my heart.
So, Gustavo, there's so much impact that you're creating here, and to really kind of get an understanding of where all that stems from, tell us about your life story. Let's go back to the very beginning.
The very beginning. Okay. I was born.
Yes.
I grew up in Colombia, in South America, Cali, Colombia. I hope we have some Caleños listening in. But when I was 8 years old, due to some circumstances, we had to move to the United States. So I came to the United States with my mom and dad. I still remember when they told me, hey, pack your stuff, in a week we're moving. First reaction was, I don't know English. How am I going to talk? And it was true. I didn't know the language, but at 8 years old, that's not the biggest barrier. You can learn a new language, especially if you're immersed in it. but it definitely had a big impact on me. And this whole experience kind of just changed the way I think about the world and what my role in the world is. Before this, I mean, my parents were very well off in Colombia. At 8 years old, I wasn't thinking about college. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was living a comfortable lifestyle. Coming to the United States, everything changed. Parents didn't know the language. They had to work many jobs to get to where they are today. And I lived through this. On top of that, after our first year in the United States, my little brother was born, and that adds another mouth to feed and another person to take care of. Love him to death, but that really changed a lot of things for us as well. My brother is my number one inspiration at the moment. But going back to when I was 8, 9 years old, seeing my parents just work as hard as they did. My mom was pregnant and working 2 jobs, 3 jobs. Just seeing that made me tell myself that I had no option. I either had to go to college and become successful or go to college and become successful. That was impregnated in my head at a very early age. And I've always wanted to make it up to my parents just through my success and through my brother's success, that the sacrifices they took were worth it for them, because essentially they came here to give me a better opportunity for an education. That's my story. And after that, it's all about hard work, good grades, and getting to a good college. When I was in high school, I remember I didn't even know you had to take the SAT when I was a senior, or I was a junior in high school. And I remember taking the SAT just a month or two before having to apply to the colleges I wanted to apply. I knew I wanted to get into Georgia Tech. I didn't know how to do it. I just knew that I had to work my hardest and take as many AP classes as I could and get good grades. Luckily, that worked. Yeah, exactly. I ended up applying to Georgia Tech and several different colleges. I got accepted, and that's where I attended my undergraduate career. At this point, I had shown my parents that their sacrifice was worth it. And I remember when I graduated high school, my dad didn't tell me anything. He said, I don't have a degree in my hands yet, right? And I understand it now. I graduated college, he said, now I know that our sacrifice here was worth it.
Yeah, I get goosebumps hearing that.
Then, that after that, I said, I got to do something more. So I went on and got my master's degree. I went to go work for General Electric in Boston. Thanks to them, they were able to support me for my master's degree, which took 3 years working full time and taking classes. But I was eventually able to do it. And I still remember giving that second diploma to my dad. I said, Dad, this is yours. This is all you. Thank you very much. That gives me goosebumps right there.
What did that mean to you? How did that feel like? What was going through your mind at that moment?
It's at that moment, for me, being able to take that weight off my parents' shoulders meant a lot. And making them happy was really what I wanted, on top of career opportunities that would come up. But that was really it. And I told him at that point, hey, I'll make sure that my brother, who's currently in high school, that he follows in the same footsteps. And I will make sure to take care of him from here on. You guys make yourself happy. You don't have to worry about us anymore.
You took it a step further and helping them out with your little brother. And I know for the parents who are listening to this, many of them are thinking, how can I recreate that in my children? I know I did have a conversation about this episode coming up, and another mother that I was talking to was very proud about what you're doing through your brother and how you didn't just take what your parents gave you. You wanted to share those gifts with your brother and essentially the community around you. And I think that's amazing what you're doing. And I actually want to point out there's quite a bit of things here that I'd love to pick your brain further on. But when Gustavo and I did meet at the mentor banquet at the Latin American Association, I had the opportunity to meet his younger brother, who I adore. He is just the greatest kid ever. And in our conversation talking, he had mentioned that he was interested in mentoring the next generation, just like Big Brother, of course. And they're always watching, and it goes to show. But I was quick to want to just snatch him up as a mentor to my son. And as it turns out, he's now mentoring my son, who is 11 years old and is transitioning into middle school. And he's at a very delicate time in his upbringing. And the power of mentoring is really hit me in that moment when I left after our first interaction with your brother. I've been mentoring for a few years now, and this is the first time that I've had the opportunity to feel the effects of mentoring on my children in the next generation. And that's thanks to your brother, and then that's thanks to you, and that's thanks to your parents.
I never, that was also a big shock to me when my brother approached you and asked you how he could be a mentor, because I've never asked him to become a mentor. I'm very happy to know that seeing others give back to the community has really sparked that interest in him to give back too. And at a high school level, there are opportunities to give back, and not many kids know that. And that's one of them. And I'm very proud of him for taking that next step.
We adore him. We want to steal him from your family. When you came at 8, that's such a young age to be pulled away from the only home that you've known in Colombia. How was that, saying goodbye and then having to associate here?
It was a big shock. I mean, I had just learned how to read in Spanish, so going over to another country and learning how to read in English was the toughest part for me. And that's also probably one of the reasons why I focused more towards engineering, because engineering is not based on the language but mathematics and calculation. So I remember when I was in school, we moved to Miami. We lived there 2 years and then up to Atlanta. But anyways, back in Miami, it helped me the fact that my teacher spoke Spanish. That was a huge blessing for me. But at the same time, she would avoid speaking Spanish to me because she wanted me to learn the language. I ended up focusing a lot in math, and I excelled in math. And I've always been top student in all my math classes growing up. And that's probably the reason why, because that was what I was comfortable with. And I would always push back on the reading and the grammar tasks at school. Those are the ones I would fail at. But eventually I picked it up. I learned the language. I knew, I think by the end of the 6 months, I was already communicating in English. Yeah. At 8 years old, you pick up a language real quick.
And so what did your parents do in Colombia?
They were industrial engineers.
Ah, so it runs in the family.
Yep. Engineering runs in the family.
When did you discover? Was it at a young age that you knew you wanted to do engineering?
I think all my family knew I was going to be an engineer. I was that little curious kid who would take apart his toys to just learn how they worked. I remember I would take away little motors from RC cars and create new RC cars. I don't know why that doesn't make sense in a business standpoint. And, that's what I would do, and I would have fun doing it. I couldn't stay still. I couldn't keep a toy intact. And over the years, I started experimenting with motorcycles, engines, and that's what drove me and my passion to become a mechanical engineer. And I'm a mechanical engineer because that's what I like to do. That is my passion. Is mechanical engineering, and that will always be my passion.
And so for those who are listening and are still discovering what kind of path they want to take when they go into college and they're considering engineering, how would you explain mechanical engineering to them?
Well, I know other people would think that I just work on cars. I've gotten that a lot. You're a mechanical engineer. Can you fix my car?
Oh, that's funny.
I mean, maybe I could, but I think you might want to take that to a mechanic. What does a mechanical engineer do? I think as a mechanical engineer, we learn how to solve problems using tactics and strategy, which rely on physics and mathematics. So it all depends on the application, right? I was a mechanical engineer for a jet engine manufacturing company, General Electric. I was put in several different teams where I was testing different equipment to make sure that when it went into an aircraft, it would work as it should, because that's the last thing you want to do when you're up flying in the air. I had roles where I was designing the bearings and the lubrication system of the jet engine. I was working military engines. Cool project that I got to work on, which will be one of the biggest highlights in my engineering career, was I got to work on the Blue Angels engine redesign. It wasn't a redesign. It's the Blue Angels wanted to upgrade their engine, wanted to make sure that they could fly upside down. And a lot of things happen when you fly an aircraft upside down, at least in the engine. So when I was in this team, we had to evaluate what would happen when the aircraft was going to be flown upside down, how long could they fly upside down, and whether or not we would allow them to fly upside down for the time that they wanted to. That was a very cool project. Again, I was not a mechanic at all. I was crunching numbers, replicating how the engine behaved on paper. That's essentially what you have to do, and theorize what would happen before you put an engine to test, because you don't want to destroy it. You don't want to, in engineering, you don't want to do trial and test all over many times, because you spend a lot of money.
I wonder, do any of these strategies that you apply as a mechanical engineer, do you transfer that over into your life? Do you ever try to figure out scenarios at home using what you've learned through your engineering practice?
I think with at home, it would be with my hobbies. I'm a motorcycle enthusiast. In my free time, I like to work on my motorcycles. And one of the things I learned in engineering is how to troubleshoot and how to be a problem solver. And whenever I get excited when one of my motorcycles breaks down, because I get to figure out what happened to it.
I could see how that translates over to when you are building upon your own skill set and you find that there's something that you want to be better at. You just naturally, where you seem to go with the way that you think, it's solve the problem, find the solution. If you wouldn't have become a mechanical engineer, what would you have done?
I've never even thought about that. I think since mechanical engineering has been in my head since I was 10 years old, and never thought about that. Maybe a police officer.
Again, helping the community. So tell me, who were some transformative leaders in your life? Here you are influencing so many of the kids in the community, but who poured into you?
My mom and dad. That's a straightforward answer. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. I don't know, I would probably be in Colombia. No idea where my future would have taken me over there. I mean, there's a lot of, I don't want to say bad stuff, but I think there's a lot of temptations to not take a successful route in your future. And those temptations are not here. And thanks to them, they never gave up. They could have easily came here, figured out that it was hard to establish a career and a good job, and that it was hard to work at $6 an hour and support 2 kids. They could have easily turned back around and gone back to Colombia. But they didn't. They taught me that hard work pays off. I think I got plenty of leaders that I can talk about. But another would be when I was in high school, I had a teacher. His name was Mr. Daly. That's it. He was my AP physics teacher for 2 years. And this guy encouraged me to get involved with science fair. Science fair is where every year you come up with a project, you present a project, and you go to different levels of presentations up to even national level. I always remember since I was a sophomore, he would stay after school with me, and I didn't realize it then. I thought teachers lived in school, but I had a family to go to, and he would stay with me till 7 8 p.m. just working on projects, on my project, teaching me the physics background that I was not learning in class that was necessary to make my project successful. That also kind of sparked an interest in me to continue an engineering career, because I knew that's what I liked doing, and it wasn't work for me. It was, I was having fun after school. I looked forward to staying after school with him. He was a transformative leader for me in high school. And then what I spoke about, the 2 guys when I was working for General Electric, one Alvarez and one Mejia, I call them the 2 ones. They really changed my life. They became really good friends with me, and they still are really good friends to me. They took me in their hands, and they walked me through the corporate culture at GE. They introduced me to a lot of people. And essentially because of them, I was offered a full-time offer. They were my mentors in the company, and I looked up to them because they also came from a background, a Latino background. They were from Colombia. And they also came here at a very early age and had a similar story, so I could relate, right? And there's not many people who I was comfortable with sharing. These guys, were a couple steps ahead of me in their careers. And they taught me how to be aggressive with my career, how to be proactive with my goals. And they led by example. So I have a lot to thank them for. Another leader would be my current boss. His name is Daryl Graff. He's the one that hired me to be a sales engineer right now. And I think we made a good connection when we met each other. He saw something in me that no one else was able to see, and that business potential. He took the risk of hiring a design engineer into a sales organization. He went with it, and he's mentored me the whole way through. Other leaders, like in the community in general. There's an author, his name is John C. Maxwell, who has to be my favorite author. After I read his first book, it was a domino effect. Just the way he writes and the way he communicates information has really encouraged me to continue reading about leadership and learning about leadership. And at the end of the day, your leadership development never ends. That's what he taught me. I was kind of mad because I missed him by 30 minutes the other day. I almost met him. I was 30 minutes late because of traffic.
Oh no.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Atlanta.
Why? So I get to the meeting and they're like, "You have no idea who just walked in here. John C. Maxwell." I'm like, "What?" I wish I could have had the opportunity to talk to him at least for 5 seconds and thank him.
What would you have said to him in those 5 seconds?
Thank you for encouraging me to become a leader. Ever since I started reading his books, it's had an impact in my life. It's my motivation now. Whenever I feel like I'm slowing down in my career and in life, I just pick up a book and it gives me that energy and the drive. And then another person who I met recently, he's new leader to me, but he's also made a huge impact in me so far. His name is David Araya. He's the president of Hope, who's the nonprofit I volunteer for. This guy he leads by example. He leads with energy. And whenever you walk into a room with him, the atmosphere and the environment changes. So he's transformed me because he's given me the opportunity to contribute to the community by doing what I love. And I love building business relationships and inspiring high school students. And without knowing me, he brought me in the team and he allowed me to go for it. And that's a big risk you take whenever you let new people in the team. As we have more people give back to their community, that's going to motivate others. And it's a domino effect downhill from there.
And that's a leadership value right there, is creating more leaders and paying it. There was this comprehensive study that was done. As a matter of fact, it was the largest study ever done on leadership. Scholars were trying to answer the question, what makes an ideal leader? They took 50 years conducting studies to try to figure out, is there any definitive styles or characteristics or skills or maybe even personality trait, what makes a great leader? And through all of their studies that they did, none of the studies had produced a clear profile of an ideal leader. And what that means is there's no cookie cutter version. We all have our own unique voices and experiences to be who we are and not have to necessarily emulate a certain way, but create impact through our own passions, through our own creativity, through our own life experiences.
That's right. You have to be an authentic leader. I think a lot of people with my background in engineering think that there's a formula to it. There really isn't. You learn it.
Has there ever been a moment when you had to overcome some limited beliefs or negative programming that you had to unlearn?
Yeah. When I first went into the workforce, I was under the impression that in order for you to be a leader and get it done right and fast, then do it yourself. That is, now I learned that that's very negative programming for, I think that you, as a leader, you have to empower others. And if you do the job yourself, you have failed as a leader. At the end of the day, your only job is to make your people successful. And how do you make them successful is teaching them the right way to do things. So if they're not doing it right, you got to teach them how to do it right. If they're not doing it fast, you got to teach them strategies and give them the tools to do the job faster. And at the end of the day, you're empowering them to be the most effective they can be at their job.
I love that. If there was a billboard up that you could put with a saying on it to someone who is looking to follow in your footsteps, what would that be? What would the billboard say?
It would have to be a pretty big billboard. So I think I would split it up in two. I'm already picturing it. So split it in half, going up and down. Left side would be in your career, right side would be in your personal life, because you can't just focus in your career. You will have to have that balance with personal life as well if you want to be a happy person. So in your career, I would say three things. I would say always maintain what I call a high say-do ratio. So everything you say, do it. Because it may work for a certain number of times where you say you're going to do stuff, and you don't do it and people believe you. But over the long term, that's going to make you look very bad, and people are not going to rely on you for help. Right. So have a high say-do ratio, and just don't be afraid to make any mistakes doing that. Number two, I spoke about it earlier, and it would be to seek out the toughest jobs or opportunities, right? Make sure the next step in your career is going to be the one no one else wants to take. Third, network. And just network as much as you can. You can't network incorrectly, right? You're always going to meet someone. And you never know, you could find a next mentor for you, which you should have plenty of mentors in your life, with different backgrounds, different stages in their career. So yeah, those three: say-do ratio, tough opportunities, and networking. Now, in your personal life, I would encourage to just develop healthy habits. And I've been a delinquent on this. I am horrible with this, and I've always tried to improve this aspect. So habits like going to sleep early and waking up early, it's going to make your day more productive. Number two, in your personal life, I'm not going to say don't overwhelm yourself, because it's going to happen and it's constantly going to be happening. But just always focus on living a balanced life between career and personal. It gets to a point where you get so focused in your career that you forget about your personal life, and it hits you in the long term. So I always say, hey, just work hard and play hard. Be really effective at work, and take some time off and enjoy yourself. And number three, in your personal life, just give back. If you've made it to a point where you can call yourself successful, give that back to somebody else. Even if it's just one person whose life you're going to change, that makes a huge difference. And I'm not talking about in terms of money. I'm not saying go and donate $1 million for a nonprofit. It's donating your time and your expertise. That's what's really going to make a difference. And that's the real way to give back, right?
So, Gustavo, what's your number one priority today?
Number one priority, it would have to be my little brother. I make sure every day that he's on the right track to become successful. And that's going to be my number one priority for the next 4 or 5 years.
And in your mind, when you say until he's successful, what does that success look like to you? When will you know what? He's going to be all right.
When he graduates college and he is doing something that he loves.
Yeah.
No matter what the pay is, none of that. I've always told them, just do what you love, but be a professional at it by a college education.
And where do you find peace?
With a helmet on, the mountains of North Georgia on a motorcycle.
Oh no. I'm sure your mom would not have the same answer.
And yeah, she tells me every day that I shouldn't be doing that, but that's really where I find peace. It's motorcycle riding. It's whenever I'm really stressed out and overwhelmed, I take some time off and I play hard. Right after working hard, you got to play hard. Yeah, and I come back and my energy is recharged without any coffee, but it clears my head. It makes me focus on the road, and kind of sounds harsh, but when you're riding a motorcycle, you're focused on not dying, and you're not thinking about work or personal life or anything. You're focused on the road and the things around you. That's what I like.
So what is one question that you would ask a fortune teller if you could get the answer?
What are the lottery numbers to tomorrow? I would ask them whether or not my family is going to be happy in the future. I don't know, 10 years, for example, right?
Yeah.
If it's the case, then I know I'm doing the right things.
As we wrap things up here, if you could step into my shoes, what question would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
I don't know. Where do you, I would have asked myself where I see myself in 1 year, 5, and 10 years.
Yes. Tell us, and also give us, how did you come up with that? Some people are like, I can barely plan out my next day.
That is very true. And it's usually what you plan out for the next year is not what's going to happen. It doesn't go that route, but it's always good to have that focus in your next goal, because if you don't have a goal, then you don't have a way of getting there, and you don't know what steps to take. Eventually, those steps that you take are going to take in a different direction, but you're taking the steps. I would say right now, my 1 year goal is now that I've been a sales engineer, I think I would like to get a little more involved in developing new business, managing accounts at a sales organization. Right. That's my 1 year goal. And that's what I'm currently working towards for. My 5-year goal, I want to be a leader of a team, and hopefully maybe a sales organization, but that can change. But I just know I want to be a leader of a team in a company, whether it's a regional, national, local team, doesn't matter. I want that experience. And 10-year goal right now, it's what it's always been. Every 10-year goal at different moments in my life, it's always been to own my own business. You would have asked me 10 years ago what I wanted to do in 10 years, and I would have said own my own business.
What kind of business would you have?
I don't even know. I really enjoy the aviation industry, and I've had some experience in it. And now that I have kind of immersed myself in the world of sales, I want to pivot more towards, let's say, a sales aviation company. So selling aviation products, for example, or even manufacturing. I haven't established that yet, but I'm constantly in the lookout for new ideas and coming up with inventions and cool ideas to start companies. 99% of them have already been invented. But yeah, those are my different goals for the next 10 years.
Hey, those inventions that are already out there are validations that you're onto something.
Well, it's funny because when I was going through my master's degree, very last semester of my master's degree, I took a class. It was called Invention.
Uh-huh.
It made us come up with, I believe, 50 ideas for inventions, and that was hard. That was hard to come up with in a 1 semester period. And we walked through the whole process of patenting an invention, only to find out that like 90% of them have already been patented, all my ideas. And then the other 10% wouldn't make sense from a financial standpoint. But hey, it teaches you to be creative, and that's something I've always been curious and creative.
So what were one of your inventions that you thought about that come to mind?
One of them wasn't in that notebook, but one of my invention ideas that I've always had, and I got to carry it out when I was a senior in college. Very last semester of college, we had to design something, and it had to be inventive. So we put a team together to design a air conditioning system for a helmet, whether it's a motorcycle helmet, a go-kart helmet, any helmet out there that covers your whole face, because in the summer it gets really hot, and it would be nice to have some AC blowing in your face when you're in hot conditions and wearing a full face helmet. So that was what we came up with. We created a product, we created a prototype. We sold the idea to the college, and we won the competition that semester for the best senior design project for that class. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I said it was a great idea. I want to start a company. But at the moment, I couldn't take the financial hit to just start from scratch. And that's always the biggest fear in starting your own company, is letting everything go and not having a stable job and starting from scratch. And I couldn't do it at that point in life. And I hope I can do it at some point in life. That's always my
I think it sounds like you need to add inventor on your resume there.
Inventor?
No patents.
No patents though. So.
Ideas pending.
Mm-hmm. Right.
No, it's awesome because what a lot of what I hear is you're focusing on how to prepare yourself now for that 10-year plan, and everything that you're taking on, you're bringing meaning to it. You're pulling in your resources, your experience, you're challenging yourself so that you can have the right support around you, but also those who are willing to challenge you back, who are able to see potential in you, and really challenging others through what you do. But all in all, what it's going to do is when that moment arises, you will be ready to meet the opportunity because you will be prepared.
I want to, that's what I always tell myself. And I hope
you will.
I can get there.
You will.
Eventually.
It certainly sounds like you will.
Thank you for that motivation.
This has been really great. I've really enjoyed hearing your background story here and understanding how your leadership journey, how it started through your early experiences in life and what it's taught you and where you are now. What's the next chapter for you?
The next chapter? I want to lead a team and have that experience. I've led teams before, but not at a corporate level. And it's such a whole different world.
Experience. Really humbles you in doing that. I've had the opportunity to do that throughout my entire career, and I've learned so much through them, through their families, and through the work that they do. And once you do that, it grounds you.
I've read a lot on it. I've heard a lot of feedback like yours right now. And every time I talk about it, it gives me chills as to chapter in life and how life keeps going and all that. Sometimes it's scary, but you're never going to get there without doing it.
Absolutely. And so as the CEO of your life that you're leading as a leader, what would you say your mission statement is?
My mission statement.
Yeah.
Work hard, play hard, and who's up with you.
Yes, I love that. I'm a strong believer that many of us at times don't see ourselves as leaders. We wait until we have the official role or the title or the experience, or we're always looking at this target that seems so far away to consider ourselves that. But I'm a strong believer that we're all leaders. We're leading our lives, and we get many opportunities in life to express that leadership. But it starts with us first. And from the research that we were talking earlier that was done, they found that leadership emerges from our life stories. And consciously and subconsciously, these great leaders who they studied, they were constantly testing themselves through real world experiences and reframing their life stories and their experiences to understand who they were at their core. And in doing so, they discovered their purpose of their leadership, and they learned that being authentic made them more effective. And I think that that's something that clearly shows in what you've done in your life. And you are certainly a leader worth following, who's creating change all around him. And I want to thank you for taking the time to share your experience, your challenges, and your story with our audience today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. I hope it can be of motivation to many people. You know what? One of the things when I meet a new leader or a new individual, I always ask for their story. You ask someone for their story, and everyone has a different story. And when I meet high school students, I tell them, encourage them to ask other people for their stories, especially young professionals. Ask them for their stories. But again, thank you for having me here today. I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I enjoy giving back and hoping to make a difference out there in the community.
And where can our listeners connect with you?
You are more than welcome to connect with me via LinkedIn. Questions you have, you want more information, or if you just want to talk and tell me your story.
Talk about Colombian food.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, you learn about the Colombian restaurants.
Well, Gustavo, it was such a pleasure. We enjoyed hearing your story, and if anybody wants to connect with Gustavo after this episode, I will include his information in the show notes. Atlanta, we wish you the best. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode. If you found even the smallest nugget of wisdom in this episode, share it with a friend, and your friend will thank you. Let's continue the conversation with like-minded leaders and join us on Facebook at Go Flip the Script. Until next time, I challenge you to incorporate what you learned today to evolve your leadership impact.